Welcome everyone. I'm Colin Hambrook, editor of Disability Arts Online. I'm an older white man wearing glasses and sitting in my home office. In our 9th artist presentation, award-winning director Tom Chimiak shares his showreel and 2 other films as part of a talk about his filmmaking work in the context of his autism. He is a young white man with short hair and glasses who talks to camera in a studio with a mixing desk and a shelf of DVDs behind him. So I hand our audience over to Tom and look forward to speaking to him for a live Q&A after his presentation. Send your comments for Tom via the Facebook or YouTube comments sections or the hashtag #DowCovidCommissions.
Hello, I'm Tom Chimiak. I am an award-winning filmmaker and artist. Welcome to my talk for Disabled Arts Online. Today I'm going to be covering a little bit about myself, a little bit about my disabilities that I have, how I work with them, how I create work about them, but also how I work in the creative space with my disabilities. And then I'm going to show you a few pieces of work, and then we're going to talk about it and talk about my processes about it. And then at the end we're going to be doing a little live Q&A after this. About me, about my work, and any questions that you may have, you can pop them in the chat boxes or wherever it is, because this is pre-recorded. I don't know where it is right now. So a little bit about me is I'm Tom. I'm from the West Midlands. I am 28 years old. I've been filmmaking for about 10 years now, and when I say filmmaking, I mean filmmaking about everything. So that could be client work, it could be various different things. I will show my showreel after this, just to kind of give you a flavour of the sorts of stuff that I create. But I never wanted to be an artist. I never thought I'd become an artist. At school, my art tutor said that I was terrible, that I couldn't do art. So yeah, it really is surprising that I am here today explaining to you about what art I have created. So yeah, I will show you my showreel now. So you can see a variety of different things that I work with. There's a key theme through my work, which is colour, collaboration, and just trying to view things in a different perspective. Within my showreel, you can actually see there's not too many people. I don't enjoy filming people, as an autistic trait of mine is that I don't actually like eye contact too much. So it's quite interesting. I don't consciously do it, but subconsciously, obviously, I'm not filming too many people looking at the camera that isn't like in a music video sense. So that's quite interesting. So as I've mentioned, I have autism. So I have high functioning autism. I was diagnosed with that when I was 15. So quite late. Some people think quite late along the process. So I was diagnosed when I was 15 with autism, or high functioning autism. And that was really useful. It kind of helped me understand why I was a little bit, or why I felt a bit different throughout the whole times of education and that sort of thing. And I remember I think it was a psychologist or psychiatrist, probably psychologist, at my diagnosis of high functioning autism, saying that people would pay to have your mind, people would pay to have your creative mind and pay to think like you. And at that time, I was like 15. I didn't really understand why. I didn't really understand why he was saying this sort of stuff. But as I've slowly developed my artwork after university, I slowly realised what he kind of meant. And he kind of meant just not what I think about and what I want to create seems odd to someone else, or doesn't seem like their typical thought process. So yeah, we'll go on to that a little bit more when I start showing my work. But so yeah, I've got high functioning autism, and then when I was born with a liver condition, which means that I can only break down a certain amount of protein. So and that's like a genetic thing. I got that inherited from my mum and my dad down to me. And yeah, so the PKU idea is a lifelong condition. PKU stands for phenylketonuria as a full name. That's a liver condition, which means that I have to manage it by medicine and by food. So I can only have 8.5 grams of protein a day. And the idea with that is my body can only break down a certain amount of protein from food. The rest of it has to come from medicine. The rest of it has to come from the medicine process and having limited amounts of food. So that's a managed condition, which means that I'm very conscious and very aware of my eating. So my disabilities really are twofold. I have a high functioning autism, and I have my PKU or phenylketonuria, genetic metabolic liver condition, I think is the correct term. So how that's blended into my art. So my artwork or my artistry, it blends sometimes. More my autism equates into my artwork. My PKU disability more lends itself towards corporate work, or I've lobbied the government for better access to drugs for my condition. So that's not necessarily the most artistic of interests, in a sense, or artistic use of filmmaking, but it's a use and it's giving my disability a voice regardless, and I think that's quite key. I went through a period of time during university where I didn't know whether I wanted to acknowledge having a disability within my artwork. I didn't want to basically feel like I was typecasting myself to just being a disabled artist. And as I've grown up and as I've developed my artwork more and more, the more I've realised that actually that's a useful thing, and that's a thing that should be embraced, and a thing that should be looked upon in a positive sense, and giving a voice to artists, or giving a voice to the conditions or the disabilities that maybe might not have been heard before, but giving it that voice, which when I was going for university I was a bit unsure whether I would, and I just wanted to be known as a filmmaker and not necessarily anything to do with this, like what I'm doing right now and that sort of thing. But I think as I slowly developed, I learned that you need to embrace your quirks, and you need to embrace what you are good at, what unique things you can bring to the table, and what can you speak about from experience that maybe other people can't. And I think that's where the autism and the PKU work kind of can build into that. Another strand of my jobs is that I lecture. I lecture at Leeds Arts University. I'm a senior lecturer in filmmaking. So it's very bizarre in a way that I'm an autistic person that makes a bit of his money through talking to people and being social and interacting with people, which for some people can be seen as very counterintuitive given what we know about autistic people not liking to typically interact with people. And I'll get onto that in a bit later about maybe how I overcome or how I help with that, because it certainly hasn't ever gone away. I still feel terrified. I don't enjoy doing this in front of the camera. But I know it's a necessity, and it's a necessity within the field that I work in that needs to happen, in a sense. So I've done enough waffling on for a little bit of time now. What the first film that I'm going to show you today is a film called Own World, which I made for an exhibition in Wolverhampton Art Gallery. It was part of my final project in my Masters in Fine Art. I should tell you actually what my what my qualifications are. So my qualifications are: I did a undergraduate, a BA in experimental film production, so I can make weird and wacky films. Then I did an MA in fine art to kind of solidify and to understand where my video work fits in to the artistry, and then I've done like a teaching qualification and stuff to help legitimise my lecturing at university. But in terms of my filmmaking qualifications, it's experimental film production as an undergraduate and fine art as my master's. So I made Own World as part of my master's exhibition, which the premise of the film, and then we'll talk about the process after the film. The premise was that when you are in society, or when you were in society pre-COVID, you saw loads of people just not choosing to interact with one another and choosing to look at their phones or have headphones in or that sort of thing. And that's very much a safety blanket and a comfort blanket for me, being autistic. But I find it very interesting that it's kind of been embraced by the mainstream. And, especially on travel or public transport, you see it all over the place. So what I wanted to do with this film was really document the physical boundaries that we give ourselves to other people in space. So whether that be our phones, whether that be mobile phones, whether that be headphones, whether that be physical things like being in a car compared to walking. So they were the things that I tried to explore within this 4 minutes, I think, video. So have a watch. So that was Own World. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It's very atmospheric as a piece. It's very about just the observation of life. And I think that kind of comes from my autistic mindset, where to learn how to integrate into society, I've had to do a lot of observing from outside. A lot of why do people act in this way? Why do people do this? And studying almost human behaviour. So when I was younger, during my teenage, I had to study, say, body language to understand, how do people function? How do people do their thing, in a sense? So with Own World, I was really getting back to those roots, that was understanding what it's like to just sit. And what I was doing typically with the tripod was setting it up far away, and sit, look, and just capture people, and be as good as I can as a filmmaker to be as fly on the wall. I hate controlling scenarios. I hate constructing reality and all that sort of stuff. So I was very much of the mindset of, I'm going to shoot with quite a long lens, and then shoot from afar, and people will act as natural as they can be, because they'll think they're not being filmed. So that was my my attempt really with Own World, and then using the fact that I was driving, and I found that driving was a really great release, because I could travel places but still travel in the comfort of my own company. So I didn't need anybody else. I didn't need to be around anybody else. I could just stick on my music, and I could travel anywhere. And I really wanted to try and incorporate that into the video, where you would understand that the car is not just being used as a mode of transport, but also as a physical barrier to people in terms of interactions. So that was Own World. That was a little bit about the process. The idea with the gallery installation was, when you're in the gallery and you weren't interacting with the piece, that people's faces just looking down the camera would turn up on screen. I'll put over the top what that was, but the idea was you would see these faces, and when you weren't interacting with the piece, but then when you did interact with the piece, that's when it would switch to be the observational Own World video. So it's kind of like a reap and reward of interaction. So for you to approach something and interact with it, or because it was censored based, it would then trigger a different response. Quite like if you interacted with someone that was texting away on their phones and that sort of thing, you'll get a different response if you would message them on the phone to if you went up and spoke to them, because some people might be more comfortable with just speaking over text rather than in person. So that's kind of what I did with the gallery exhibition. So, as I've already mentioned, obviously I'm autistic, I've got PKU, I lecture at university, and filmmaking requires me to work with other people. You can make films on your own, but most of the time you're having to work with other people and use your own expertise mixed in with other people. And there's this popular, not misconception, but there's this popular thought process that autistic people can't socialise or can't interact, or they'll really struggle to talk to people. Now, obviously, autism is a spectrum. Autism, traits are a spectrum. Severity is a difference. Thankfully, I've got high functioning autism, or when I was diagnosed at 15, I had high functioning autism. But when I was younger, I had a far more severe case of autism. And I do think there's some behavioural methods that can be learned as coping mechanisms, is what I call them. So then you can deal with society. So I lecture, 100 to 200 people I have done a day, and I can do it. It's very tiring though. So I do have to have downtime. I do have to have what I class as me time. And I think that's probably where, as an artist, I survive, is having almost, or I view it as two different hats. So I have an artist hat, or a lecturer hat, or whatever, where I'm having to be this extrovert, talkative, we're going to network, we're going to chat to people, that sort of thing. And then when I come home after those events, I just want to be in my own space. I want a bit of me time, I want to claim a bit more space back off me, and it's just relax. I just want to relax. So it doesn't necessarily mean because I'm quite a social artist, that doesn't necessarily mean that the autism is gone. It's just I've learnt how to hide as much from the public as much as I can, and then getting the rest back through my relaxation when I get home. So that's a bit about me being social and being autistic, which kind of leads us into the second film, which is called Vocal Barriers. This film was originally a commission by Channel 4's Random Acts. So I pitched them this idea, which was everybody thinks that technology is bad. Really sweeping statements. Everybody thinks technology is bad. Everybody thinks that we spend too much time on technology. We spend too much time in our screens and that sort of thing. That actually we're forgetting things. And I'd watched so many films, so many different art pieces that cover this angle. And I was like, well, for me, as an autistic individual, I like my screens. Like, if I don't need to interact with someone, I'm looking at a screen. Looking at pixels calms me down. So why should I present it as a negative thing? And what happens if I present it as there's a reason why people are doing this? Why do we think that if people are so involved with headphones or screens or that sort of thing, that it's necessarily a bad thing? So I wanted to kind of explore this angle with vocal barriers. So yeah, we'll have a watch and then I will chat about it a bit more afterwards.
We slip through streets like swarms of ants in the undergrowth of economic architecture, pushing against pavements and tarmac spaces. We manage to forge new routes through our social separation, able to carry our own hands from pockets, nurturing digital glass houses where we harvest unvocalized statements. I rest social media in between my fingertips. Rubber vines attached to buds take roots in my mind, and I listen to its botanical silence. Ignoring the twists of anxiety in face-to-face interactions. Strangers asking for the time and directions, the where of going. Instead, push music further into my flowerbed ears. Holding out breath long enough just to avoid overexposure. It's as if the digital world was too much of a submersion, from where we've been keeping sunlight in our screens, looking up only for the idea of oxygen just to nosedive into digital soil. Gardens in which we can perfect, edit, and delete sentiments. Why would I want to look anywhere else?
So you just saw Vocal Barriers. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It was geared more towards a music video clientele or audience to kind of get the message across. I think it's really one of my most proudest pieces of work that covers an area of autism that I think is a necessary area that needs to be covered, that needed to help emphasise that sometimes people are avoiding the world for a good reason and not necessarily it's a bad thing. And hopefully you got that across with Vocal Barriers. So I think you've kind of seen with my showreel with the films, there's a distinctive theme within my work. The theme, as I said at the start, is colour, collaboration, and kind of presenting the autistic look a little bit more, especially in my art stuff. My PKU stuff, I do like live cooking shows or a podcast that can kind of help give a voice to it. It's less artistic, it's less creative, but again, I think it's my job as a disabled artist to help, one, increase awareness of the conditions that I have, two, present it in a light that is a positive light that can connect with an audience further than just the people that know about the condition, and three, just present it within your work. Don't hide. Like when I was about 18, 19, I didn't want to be known as a disabled artist. I didn't want to be known as, oh, he only does work about autism or something like that, because I was nervous. And I think there's a level of confidence that comes with being an artist that is disabled to go, you know what, it's okay to say that I am disabled. It's okay to say these are the conditions that I have, or condition, or that sort of thing. And I'm very much positive. I've given talks about my liver condition at conferences and stuff like that. I'm so positive about my disabilities that it's probably why it comes through my work officially and unofficially at times. So there's various different pieces of work, like a creative interpretation, which you saw on my show, or which I'll pull up a bit of a clip now. That's all about watching multi-screen TV. Again, I like screens, so this is why I've dedicated a bit of time to that. During the coronavirus lockdown, I created a music video for the Coventry City of Culture, which I really enjoyed, because I could just work on it at my own pace, in my shed, out in my garden, and I could be as introverted as I wanted to be. So I think there's pros and cons with being a disabled artist, but it is all about confidence. It is all about just embracing what you have and understanding that your mind works differently to other people if you are autistic or if you have any other things, and no one else can showcase that the way that you want to showcase it. So it's like, use your voice because you've got a different outlook. Like, coming straight back to what that psychologist said to me, which was people pay to have your mind. That's always stuck with me, and that's always helped push me when I've kind of doubted what I've been making or doubted about what I could do as an artist. The thing that I've had over the last 10 years is not being afraid to explore those routes. I feel like you can be a disabled artist and not have to make any disabled work, or you can be a disabled artist and make work about being disabled. It doesn't matter these days. Cheers for your time. Thank you. Thank you for watching it all. It was, hopefully it's been interesting, and it's been a very self-reflective process, this whole thing has. So I'd like to thank Disability Arts Online, and thank you for watching. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Hi, Tom. Hi.
Hello.
Hi there.
How are you doing?
Thanks very much for that. It was a very clear and insightful explanation of the relationship between you as an autistic person and your filmmaking. It's very enjoyable kind of seeing you interact with the films and giving us that kind of lowdown of and I was kind of curious, really wanting to find out a bit more about the making of the films, and music's clearly kind of very essential to your process. I wondered how how it works.
Yeah, I think I go through maybe some untraditional methods with music. I always, no matter what the project is, I always have the music before I start filming. So, and that's creative projects, obviously. If it's corporate stuff, you can't. But creative projects and art projects is that the music always comes first, and then I fit the visuals and the editing around the music. And that's on various, there don't even need to be music videos. I think that stems from maybe from the age of 2, 3. I've always been listening to music. I've always been, it's weird. I work in film, but I actually listen to more music than I do watch films. But it's that case of I'm always doing something to music. So there's always different projects and different inspirations. When I'm coming up with ideas, I'm always listening to music that will help either create something or a certain tempo. It doesn't have to be lyrically, it doesn't matter. It's more about the sonic and the tempos and the beats and that sort of thing that matters to me than any emotional lyric pushing that music could have. But yeah, and I always work with composers. I'm not musically talented myself. I can't. So it's always getting someone else to bring their vision from what I originally understand it and then go, you do it, sort of thing. And that delegation idea rather than trying to do everything myself.
I understand that from our little chat previous to this, that the music comes first, that you get the music made before you start the filmmaking process. That's really intriguing.
So the composers always the composers always make it before I film, and I think they found that quite weird to start off with, because normally they get drafted in when it's being edited. But yeah, I was like, I need something to film to, but also say the ink stuff on the ink footage that you saw on the show reels and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. If a film doesn't require sound, I always have music playing on my sets. So I've always got some form of rhythm going on whenever I'm filming, even if it's something that isn't actually going to end up in the final piece.
And I think Joe has just joined us again. Right. Sorry about that, Tom. We just had a technical hitch. You were just describing to me about how you give the musicians, the composers that you work with, a mood board.
Yes,
to work to.
So visually, when I was learning with filmmaking and stuff, mood boards are like things to do with cinematography or how things look or the way it's lit. Whereas what I wanted to do with the composers was not go, oh, could you do it slow and then do it fast, and be really imprecise with my feedback. And I gave them an A4 sheet of various different album artworks, some inspirations of visuals that you may see over the top, but mainly listen to these songs, listen to these albums or these artists, and then this is the style that I'm looking for. And because I'd hopefully picked quite talented composers, that then they would go, okay, I could fit that style. And I had like 2 different ones that would kind of circumvent the 2 different genres that I might need as a musical style, and I'd go to either one dependent on what project would require the style of music, sort of thing that's necessary for the project.
Cool. We've just had a question come in on WhatsApp asking how you feel about stepping outside of your comfort zone and working with YouTubers, for example.
Yeah, I think
collaborating with others.
I think it's a nerve-wracking thing, because you can have negative experiences. I think I try and do a lot remotely, so I try and do a lot online. Probably a safety element, because not in the idea of, if they don't like working with me, I won't find out, in the sense because it's over email or something like that. But I think people are always better at other things than you, and I quite enjoy the challenge of seeing what someone else can come up with. It's just then about, from an autistic perspective, monitoring that and trying to be open and going, this is what my vision is. Could you try and put this across, or could you try and do this? And I'm really open with my autism to anybody. I kind of it's probably a bad thing to say, but I kind of view it as a get out of jail free card a little bit. So if they go, oh, this person's a bit hard to work with, I'm like, I'm autistic, it's fine, sort of thing. And like, it kind of eases it up a little bit, but I'm also not hiding of it. Like I used to be, as I said in my video, I used to be quite not really wanting to mention it, or not really wanting to play with it when I was doing work. Whereas working with people now, they know, and I think they're actually more surprised when I tell them, more than anything, that I do have it, because they're like, oh, we didn't think of any different. And I'm like, I'm just a quirky artist, it's fine. So
in a lecturing situation, for example, where you're talking to students, would you, in that kind of situation, would you talk about having autism?
I mention it in passing. I think it's because I teach in filmmaking as well. It's that sense of I think it can help some students understand that if they've got autism or some form of learning disability, that they can still be stood up and had a job and that sort of thing, and still make and create. I kind of use it more as an inspirational thing, or aspirational to people, more so than going too much in detail about it to them. It's just, I have autism. Then some autistic students go, oh, that's really good, I wouldn't think you'd do teaching. And I'm like, neither did I, but I've ended up in it. And then then they don't, but then it's all an act. Teaching is just an act idea. And then when I get home, that's when I, like I said in the video, face sheer exhaustion from it. And that's the same with being on sets. When I was on the Channel 4 set, there was like 15 people that I had to manage. And that was tiring, but it's like, it won't last forever. So it's like, you pull up a front, it's like a performance, like an actor, and then it will end eventually. So you're like, whew, sort of thing. So that's kind of my coping mechanism, in a sense, to appear as normal as possible, but still being true to me, in a sense, rather than being true me and not being able to get places.
So do you ever get autistic students asking you about the strategies that you've formulated?
Yeah, I do. And I think they ask, like, how do you I think I got diagnosed quite late, so I think that was quite a benefit of a sense, because I kind of found a little bit of my way as it is without having a label. But they do go like, how do you seem like you're enjoying teaching? I do enjoy teaching, but seeming like that it's the best thing ever, and it's your passion and this sort of thing. And I just go, you've got to learn scenarios. It's scenario based learning. With, if you're in this scenario, this is what a person wants from you. If you're in this scenario, this is what, and it's really micromanaged thought processes. But the more that you can think of life in those ways, the more that it can seem not as random as it seems, if you know what I mean. So like, when you can't control something, it seems really out of ordinary and it's random. Whereas if it's like, well, this just lines up similar to this event that I just went and did, or I was in this scenario, it's just the people are different, sort of things. So
yeah. It's like you say about being true to yourself and being honest, I guess. Being honest.
Yeah, I think it's, it's what I mean. If I say it, and if people have any thoughts in their mind of like, oh, this person's not really interacting particularly well, if you say it, then it's that kind of, well, it's there, so just give me a bit of time with it, sort of thing. Rather than if you hide it, then people might just think you're quite bad at interactions, and they might just go instantly off you. And it's, so that's why I kind of come to realize that actually it's a good thing to disclose, because it gives you some safety.
One of the things that occurred to me watching Own World was this sense of how used we've become as society to being captured on camera, and most urban spaces, there's a CCTV somewhere that's there in the name of public safety, and it's very rare that someone would complain about being filmed anonymously in public. And when I was growing up, society was very different. The whole concept of a stranger pointing a camera at you was very much seen as an invasion of privacy, and historically coming from the idea that a camera will capture a piece of your soul, and only you as an individual have the right to allow another person to own your image. And I wondered, as an autistic person, sensitized to avoid interaction from people you don't know, how you feel about this, what this change in cultural conditioning means to you.
I think it's, if I was talking about how I was filming Own World, I was surprised at how little people noticed me filming. And I think that was quite a surprise. I went in, I felt like I was putting myself in quite a bit of a deep end, because if people come up to you and if people get angry, then you're having to deal with confrontation and all this sort of stuff. So I'm putting myself in an environment that I don't particularly want to be in, to try and film something that I think takes place. But that's what it was. I thought it took place, but I didn't know if I'd be able to capture it. And we're only filming in Leeds for one day. But it was like, it really surprised me how desensitized people were to, my camera's not small. It was a big camera with a tripod. It's not like undercover filming that you see on these shows that it's like it's a button and it's a camera. And I was trying to be really obvious and see what people would do, and people didn't react. And I think in a way that's a worrying thing, but in another way, from my autistic perspective, I found it quite comforting, because I could actually just feel like I could blend a bit more in. So if they're not noticing a camera, if I'm having, a slight bit of uncomfortability, or like, I'm a bit on edge on a train or something like that, if they're not noticing someone filming in a city centre with a huge tripod, then they're not going to be noticing you, maybe doing odd, people scratch hands and stuff, don't they? And that's sort of like the odd ticks that people might do to try and calm down. And it's like, actually, it made me realise that people just aren't paying attention as much as they would have done about 10-20 years ago, and that would have been an odd thing to see. So it's quite comforting in a way, but also quite alarming to society.
Yeah. And how did people respond to Own World in the gallery installation space? I wonder how viewers kind of reacted with the sensor-based projections.
I think they kind of enjoyed it. I wanted to make film less passive in a gallery experience, because I think film is a very opt-in, opt-out. Are you on board with this experience in a gallery? But the way that I did the sensor layout was, if you interacted with it, people actually got further away from you, which is very counterintuitive to an audience. So I saw quite a lot of confused, enjoyable but confused faces when interacting with it, because if you put effort in, you'd expect to see more. But what you did was you didn't see any of the people. You just got further away from the subject, which reflects my mind and how much I like to observe people. But they were just like, well, I expected to go closer in on this person, or I expected to hear them talk, or, and it was meant to be going against conventions, but also getting them to interact. I think they enjoyed the interacting idea, because you saw it walk past and they go, it's just changed. Because with film, you expect it to just be, well, it doesn't matter what you do, you could walk past it, it'd just be on a rolling thing throughout the whole day. And it would join at any time throughout that video too. So it didn't join at the start of the video would be playing completely underneath at any time. So you could join the video at any time in the gallery. So I think people found that quite interesting, because it meant that their viewing experience was a personal one. So it was a unique thing to them that they would see 10 seconds of that person on the phone, and then if they walked back a bit, it would be back to the people, sort of thing. So they were quite confused, which was good to see.
Which kind of helps the kind of level of engagement, I guess.
Yeah, and also to help them understand what it's like to actually see the world in that way. Because for me, I wouldn't want to interact with that video because I don't want to approach people as much. So I'm actually making something that I wouldn't want to interact with myself. I'd be happily there if the sensor's triggered and I'm watching people from afar. But before, I wouldn't be the person to approach the exhibition.
Right. And going back to vocal barriers, it was a very fine poet that you had performing that piece. Can you tell us a bit more about the process of how you found her and got her to write for you?
Yeah. So the poet was called Jess. We originally met by me doing some corporate filming for like a poetry company in Birmingham. So I literally was just a camera operator that was just filming about, I think, 10 poets that day in Birmingham, just to give them something for their show reel. And I saw Jess and I really liked her way with words. So I said, hey, I'm the person that filmed you, sort of thing. And we communicated over email. And then when this idea came about when I pitched the idea to Channel 4, I was like, I know a poet. Jess, would you be interested? She said yes. When it got commissioned, then we were like, okay, it's got to happen now. And then because it was based on my autistic of like, I enjoy technology. Why is technology seen as a negative thing? I enjoy it and it's my safety blanket. But I'm not a poet. I didn't want to write it. So, I think it would come off too self-indulgent. I was in it. That was enough. So what I did to Jess was say, here's some autism forums. Here's a book that's very anti-technology. And these are my experiences of how I like to cope in society. Mm-hmm. And she already had the music because Jake had already made the music at that point. So go ahead and write something that's very descriptive, that all we need is something that's a little chunk out where everybody's got the headphones in and the music goes silent. So you've got to have a little bit of a gap. And that was really it. That was the only remix that I gave her because I wanted it to be from her voice. Mm-hmm. And then when we're on set, she was live recorded. So she delivered the poem live. I think she kind of delivered it probably about 15, 20 times. So she probably still remembers it now. But because I wanted to get the energy across. I didn't want it to be a flat, I'm just delivering this because I'm being told to deliver it. So, and I think that came across with her delivery. It was various different takes being put together, but you could get the idea of, that she felt for those words, which I think is good because the idea originally wasn't hers, but it still comes across as she believes in what she's saying, which is why I didn't write the poem and then get someone to just perform it, because I felt then you wouldn't get the honesty in the delivery or the believability.
The authenticity. Yeah.
And that's probably why I live recorded. I hate, like I said in the video, I hate constructed reality. So it's that idea of if I can make anything as live as it can be or as real as it can be, I will do that. And that's why with the own world filming, I filmed people and knew that I had the power of editing, that I could edit them to look how bad or good as I wanted. But it was just, that's why I just film it authentically, pull it together, and it all pieced together pretty quickly. So it's that case of authenticity is a big thing within the work, especially the two films that I've shown.
Fantastic. And you've got an impressive set of commissions on your CV. I wonder what's next. What does the future hold?
Oh, that's next. So at the moment, I'm finding my feet with everything that's going on with the what I can film and what I can't film is the thing. Obviously, I filmed a music video for Coventry City Culture in the summer in my shed, so that was glamorous. So I don't know. I'm going to probably go. I'm interested to see what society's like now when you're out and about. Society is so much different now than when I filmed like Homeworld or something like that. So I think I'm certainly going to look at doing some more observational filming to kind of document this time, because I think society is moving in a different way now. You know, I walk down the street and people go onto a different side of the path to avoid you, and it's there's so many different conventions now to learn, which is quite hard as an autistic person to learn, but also it's quite interesting to watch and to kind of take on board, so that's what I think I'll probably be doing as well as teaching. But yeah, it's that kind of so that's what maybe is what next.
We look forward to finding out more, and many thanks, and thanks to everyone for joining us for this discussion. And I think you've given us some real food for thought on collaboration and the autistic look, and there's more about your portfolio on tomchimiak.com. So I urge people to go and have a look at your website. We've pasted a link to feedback forms on our artist presentations on YouTube and Facebook, and anyone who's up for filling those in, we'd appreciate that. Thank you. Our next artist presentation features Holly Norcop introducing us to her light and sound installation, Media Storm. It's going to be streamed via our Facebook page and YouTube on Wednesday, the 30th of September at 7 p.m. Holly's talk will outline psychological theories that inspire her audio soundscape and how it explores the interaction between mental health and social media use from a neurodiverse perspective. So we're looking forward to seeing Holly, and just remains me to say thanks once again to Tom Chimiak, and cheers. Bye for now.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.